think the Trump DOJ is finally zeroing in on target number one here. They found you, Charlie.
It was, what do you mean me? You don't think that you're on the list. See, this is the problem. Everybody thinks that somebody else is on the list. They don't think that them. I'm
No, I
guessing
think
there's a list.
I think I'm on the list, but you're way higher on the list than me. They'll get
Okay,
to
so
me.
let's start with the list. The big vote today. The House of Representatives voting on releasing the Epstein file. Epstein file. By the way, could we just remind everybody that Donald Trump could release those files anytime he wants, right? He could do it. So we're going to go through this whole elaborate kabuki dance. Like, no, we absolutely cannot do this. And what's interesting is how incoherent he looks, as well as weak. I mean, caving into Marjorie Taylor Greene, weak, but also incoherent. So on one minute, it's like a complete hoax. There's nothing there. Next minute, okay, you have to investigate all the Democrats. We have to have a grand jury to do all of that. And then, of course, there's the whole bringing congressmen into the Situation Room to browbeat them. Do not sign that discharge petition. And then what? 48 hours later, release them. I don't care. We don't care about what's in those files. I mean, wow, it's kind of an interesting moment to watch Donald Trump have to cave in, right?
It is. And I think, so first of all, I mean, the multiple theories that are contradictory, this is part of the MO, right? I mean, the 2020 election was stolen by Venezuelans taking boats to Maine. And, it was like there were numerous mutually exclusive theories. It just didn't matter. You throw everything and see what sticks at the wall. Remember, January 6th could have been a beautiful, peaceful picnic, or it could have been the FBI and a false flag operation.
At the same time.
Yeah,
right.
At the same time. And so it doesn't surprise me that this, that there are multiple, choose, pick your poison kind of thing. My thinking is, what I'm curious about is, it used to be if there's smoke, there's fire. And if someone looks guilty, you assume they're guilty. But
Yep.
I think we've learned in recent decades that there are times when people look super guilty. And but it may be that, I mean, certainly with Trump specifically, he just doesn't like to be transparent. He doesn't like to be pressured. So he can behave a certain way that would suggest to any rational person that he is guilty of this thing, and it may be something else entirely. Or
he's
how
guilty.
about this?
He's guilty of something,
Well, that's clear. But how about this? I'm looking at some reports here. We've got, so this is from James O'Keefe's website, apparently, the O'Keefe Media Group. It says DOJ deputy chief admits government will, quote, redact every Republican while, quote, leaving all the liberal Democratic people on the Epstein list.
Yeah, that's an old story, though, right? Yeah.
Drudge is linking to it today. There's a Bloomberg story that says the FBI redacted Trump's name in the Epstein file. So,
yeah, I mean, look, there's a couple of things. Number one, this strategic retreat by Donald Trump does not mean these files are coming out. There's all kinds of things he can do. He can torpedo it in the Senate. He could refuse to sign it. He could say the ongoing criminal investigation means you cannot release all of that. And then, of course, there's the question of, will they release something, and how heavily redacted will it be? I mean, at this point, can anybody give the benefit of the doubt to the Trump folks that they will not scrub those files, they will not selectively leak those files or release those files? I don't. But it is interesting. Once again, here we are in the second half of November 2025, and you and I are still talking about this, which is amazing in and of itself, given the way the news cycle. I mean, let's note that. Also, how kind of amazing it is that whole Marjorie Taylor Greene thing. Now, you and I may have a slightly different take on all of this. She's experiencing this strange new respect. She's out there as the voice of conciliation and respect. And, if Donald Trump is lashing out at her as Marjorie Traitor Greene. I mean, it's nasty. It's a nasty breakup. It's almost Elon Musk nasty breakup level. But I don't know. What is your take on MTG? I mean, it's like, she's enjoying her moment in the sun. How much of it's performative, and how much of it is that we have seen into her soul and that she is a new woman?
Multiple thoughts here. First, Marjorie Trailer Greene is obviously the best nickname, right? I mean, that would be that's the best,
Oh,
right? Like a trailer park. I think
oh
clearly
yeah,
that's the one. Why Trump didn't land on that, I'll never know. Maybe he's trying to
he
keep his
will.
fearless image, but I still think it's the best nickname, way better than Marjorie Brown Green or Marjorie Taylor Brown or whatever he was going for
Yeah.
there. Um, Look, I, I think on one hand, I think we do need to kind of, without falling for it every time Kanye says he's become a Christian and seeing
Right.
the light, I think we do need to be open to converts and weird allies, strange bedfellows in this fight. And I do think that although Marjorie Taylor Greene is clearly a weird person, I think she may actually like be a true believer in some things. Like the QAnon phenomenon was ostensibly about child sex trafficking. Maybe she actually does really care about that. I think she's a
Yes, he
true
does.
believer in sort of this America First populism. And so while I'm not ready to jump on the like Marjorie Taylor Greene for president bandwagon, I give her a little grace that she actually could be sincere about some of this.
Okay, so I agree with a lot of that, but because I agree with the overarching principle that we ought to extend grace, that we ought to be willing to accept converts. On the other hand, we're kind of a cheap date here because can I ever remind everybody she's Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's Jewish space lasers Marjorie
Yeah.
Taylor Greene, election denier Marjorie Taylor Greene. Has anybody asked her about January 6th lately? Has anybody asked her about, these school shootings in Sandy Hook? Has anybody asked her about her other bizarre theories? This is a woman who has risen to a level of prominence by not just sort of her feculent bigotry, but also her willingness to embrace in the uh, in the most torrid sort of way the most batshit crazy conspiracy theories. So if she works through all of that and asks for a certain says that I really have converted on a lot of that stuff. You know what? Joe Biden did win the 2020 election. Absolutely. I mean, these things. Then let's talk to her. But get back to me next week on her.
Yeah. But let me
Get back
throw
to
out a
me because okay, simply because she is sincere does not mean that she's not still sincerely batshit crazy, even if
yes.
we kind of like the role she's playing right now. It's for the same reason that I urge people like do not buy into the whole Michael Wolff, investigative reporting into Donald Trump and Epstein. Sometimes the people who are on your side may still be pretty horrid people. I mean, just saying that.
No, I think we agree, but I would say as was it Churchill who said something to the effect of if Satan were invading Germany, I would
Yeah, I'm
what was
kind
the
of.
line? So I mean, like
Well, yeah,
this is I don't literally mean this analogy, but Stalin, we team up with Stalin to beat Hitler. Um, that doesn't mean Stalin's a good guy or a perfect guy. It means he was a temporary ally. And I think it would probably be naive to think that Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to have a complete epiphany and conversion and turn into like Liz Cheney or something like that. In fact, that might not even be desirable. To stop Donald Trump at this point requires someone who has MAGA street cred. And so I think if Marjorie Taylor Greene actually became entirely sane and adopted the Reagan conservative values that you and I share,
yeah, she's out.
she would actually no longer be able to fulfill her role of stopping Trump, which is what we need her for to begin with. So
Okay,
I think she's doing us a service, and this is again strange bedfellows.
okay. So I'm a little bit more skeptical, but I generally agree with this. Although the idea that we have to align with Joseph Stalin right now is just maybe not the analogy that I want to go for. But the fact is that there's a couple of things that are objectively true. Number one, Marjorie Taylor Greene did something that almost nobody else in the Republican Party has done. She stood up to Donald Trump and she won. She actually got him to back off, which is kind of amazing. The second thing is that leaving aside her rather strange personality, there's a real split now in MAGA world. There's a real split in Republicans among those people who have MAGA street cred. And a lot of it has to do with this whole Tucker Carlson, Groyper adjacent, issue about whether or not MAGA should be welcoming to neo-Nazi white supremacists. Apparently, the Heritage Foundation president thought so, and that organization is in complete meltdown right now. You saw that Robert George resigned from the board. You have Ted Cruz and Ben Shapiro ripping Tucker Carlson. You have J.D. Vance and Trump aligning themselves with Tucker Carlson and the Groypers. This is real. And it's I suppose, and I got to write something about this at some point, but this is sort of what happens when you build an entire movement not based on principle, but based on weird conspiracy theories, opportunist crackpots, all of those sorts of things, and you are starting to see the sands shifting. You feel that? I mean,
Yeah.
he's not a lame duck yet, but you're starting to see the post-Trump division, which is very real
Yeah.
on
And
the
look, I
way.
think some of this could be sincere with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like I think she sees America first as meaning not just isolationism, but also America first before Trump. Before any, but she's always saying, I
Maybe.
am more interested in America than any politician, than any party. Like that's that I like that. I like hearing people say that. So in that regard, America first is like country first, John McCain's slogan, right? Um, the other thing though that I'll say about her is some of it could be do well by doing good or whatever, right? It could be sincere, but also there are political motivations. We're looking to 2028. I think what happened at, the other Tuesday in 2025 in Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City showed people we're beginning to imagine a post-Trump MAGA world. Someone is going to inherit that, right? And there's politicians will be jockeying for 2028, but also influencers. And so I think what we're seeing right now is basically the sense that Trump is a lame duck, and he's been for a long time now, but it's finally starting to sink in. And not only is he a lame duck, Charlie, he doesn't have any coattails when he's not on the ballot, and he will never, good Lord willing, be on the ballot again.
You probably saw this. Tim Carney had a really interesting analysis over at the AEI about what's happened to Republicans during the Trump era, and he makes exactly the point you just made, which is that when Trump's on the ballot, Republicans do relatively well. Obviously, he was elected president. On the other hand, when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, you're starting to see real hemorrhaging of support among Republicans. And I think that that's kind of the freak out here. What what's going to happen at the state and the local level if you don't have his coattails. So yeah, you are seeing this jockeying for succession. I mean, it's all happening at once, right? You have the jockeying for succession, all of the egos and all of the ambition, but you also have an ideological split because the fact is, we're talking about America first. You know what? Nobody knows what America first is. Donald Trump, I think, is the closest to it when he says America first is what I say it is. And
Right.
that's it. There, there's no through line. There's no principle. There's no ideology behind it. It is what Donald Trump says, which means it is governed by his whims. Take out his whims, and you have all of these sort of wannabe successors trying to come up with stuff. And so, again, you build a movement on crackpots, on people who you would, who should not be allowed into society, quite frankly. You look at his administration. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to start to see this break, this crack up. So
Yeah.
anyway,
No, I think that's right. Peggy Newton used to say that when you worked for Reagan, you didn't have to guess what he wanted. Like everyone knew he had these two or three big things that we're going to do. And
right.
you didn't have to go check. You knew like what his worldview was and what he wanted to do. With Trump, like, that on a couple of things. Like if it's about Trump, you should be pro Trump. That's not going to change. But there isn't really like a coherent, like, ethos or
Worldview.
your ideology, right? That you can, and so all these different people join this very unwieldy coalition for different reasons. And in some cases, the things they want are actually mutually exclusive. And so once Trump is gone, the glue, like there is no,
Walking.
like the conservative movement and with all its flaws had this thing called fusionism, right? Which held these disparate things together. And I think the Soviet Union being this existential threat was kind of the glue. I don't think that exists for Donald Trump. So once he's gone, once this strong man, effectively, who's been
Yeah.
keeping peace, and by an imposed peace, right? Once he's gone, it comes apart, and there isn't any charismatic figure capable of sort of holding it together.
I know. I think that's exactly right. And the way that he has structured Trump 2.0, I think makes that even more problematic. To use probably the wrong word here. He surrounded himself with. I mean, in Trump 1.0, you had some substantial people, right? You had some substantial people in the cabinet, people who had lives outside of government, who had accomplishments outside of government, who had a certain level of competence in the world. Trump 2.0, he's decided that all he cares about is loyalty, slavish loyalty, and an absolute inability ever to say no. This is the weakness of an authoritarian regime. Just a textbook, which is you surround yourself with incompetence, people who really don't know what they're doing, but tell you what you want to hear. Inevitably, you start to make mistakes, but also, look at all the second and third and fourth and fifth graders that he has stacked the government with. What happens when he leaves? They scatter. What kind of future do they have?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm now starting to think about the Department of Justice, for example, the stories we've gotten about the Department of Justice. We could do this, by the way, in any department. We could talk about the Department of Defense, but the Department of Justice. Did you see the story about the Comey case? I think it's
No,
fascinating. Okay, this is really, really good. So the judge the federal magistrate who's presiding over Lindsay Halligan's indictment of James Comey, it goes through and goes, I'll make this really simple. This was done incredibly incompetently. There are so many errors here. It is so bad that we may have to just throw out the entire case. Now, if you, and I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes here, but you look at Lindsay Halligan, you know why Donald Trump picked her. Donald Trump likes people
she's
who
good looking. Let's put
he
the
is,
cards on the table.
but we have to understand in Donald Trump's mind, that's the qualification. And so he's put in place somebody who is completely out of her depth, completely incompetent. And it is falling apart in probably Donald Trump's, let's say his signature case, the one that he's lying in bed there, in his isolated splendor, thinking, I'm going to get James Comey. But the problem is he sends Lindsay Halligan to get James Comey, and it turns into a massive foobar. And I think that in some ways that's kind of an indication. You need to have smart people doing this. And again,
Mm-hmm. Not
all of
just
this is
smart,
going to affect. Yeah.
not just smart people, but also tough people, who can tell the emperor he has no clothes on. Donald Trump has not only has he pushed out a lot of competent people, but he's pushed out anyone who might challenge him. So he's really surrounded by two types of people: ideologues, people like Stephen Miller, who, I mean, like, so I think border control is popular, but Stephen Miller's version of it is not popular. He is obsessed with this, and he has like got a, you know, Gestapo vibe
Yeah.
going, right? And then people like Russ Vogt. So Trump's around hardcore ideologues, and then he's around like billionaires who are, cabinet officials and donors. And like he used to go around the country doing these rallies. Even when he was president, he would go out and do these sort of rallies every once in a while, and he would get this focus group going. And I think it helped him get out of his bubble and kind of know what Joe Sixpack, at least among the MAGA base, Joe Sixpack,
Yeah.
cared about. I don't think Trump, whether it's his sort of physical limitations now, his age, or the assassination attempts, or just whatever laziness, he's not really exposed to a lot of regular people anymore. And so it's a lot of these like incompetent yes men or people who have their own crazy agenda that is in no way representative of regular populist voters. And so I think that's part of the Marjorie Taylor Greene story, is that she actually is in touch with those real people, um, in a way that Trump no longer is.
Okay. So listen, I'm really not prepared to give her quite as much credit as you are, but I will say this. Okay. Let's we'll revisit this in a month. Okay. And if in fact she continues this journey that she's on the road to Damascus, I will admit that.
On
Okay.
the road to
But
Des Moines.
I just seen this so many times, of these people, and then they come back. But I think
Yeah.
the point you're making about how out of touch Trump is dead on, because there does seem to be a real element where he's kind of lost the plot. And I do think that the sort of Mar-a-Lago culture where he's sitting around with a bunch of fat cats and billionaires. And by the way, have you spent much time with really, really rich people? It's
Yes, they're
amazing.
annoying. So out of touch.
Okay,
So out of touch.
the thing about them is they think they know a lot more than they do. They have
Yep.
very strong opinions on everything. They think they know stuff that because they are so rich, they're experts in all sorts of areas. They have no idea, and sometimes their tone deafness is actually kind of breathtaking.
Yeah.
And so, if he has created a bubble where these rich people, come and they drop their latest, pet project on him, and he acts on it. That's not going to be good for his populist credit. You really do get the kind of sense. I mean, some of these ideas that sort of pop out, like did somebody mentioned that,
The 50-year
after
mortgage. The 50-year
perfect
mortgage is
example,
a classic example, right?
perfect example.
It's work all your life, never actually own anything, and pay the banks even more money and mortgage interest and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but there
Um,
are people who are bad at math who will think that that's a good idea, but I don't know.
so
Yeah,
let me move on from Marjorie Taylor Greene and give my props to someone else who's not necessarily always a great, someone I don't always agree with, but I think like Marjorie Taylor Greene, he actually is a straight shooter, and that's Thomas Massie from Kentucky, who's taken on Trump, and I think doesn't get the credit he deserves. And Massie is doing something very smart too. I mean, if you listen to the messaging he's saying, he like literally went on, I think it was CNN, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty close. He said, "Dear colleagues, fellow congressmen, fellow Republicans,
mhm,
Donald, you're thinking that Donald Trump can save you in 2026 or defeat you in 2026. And like maybe he can, maybe he can't. But here's what I'm going to tell you. In 2028, he will not be able to save you. And you will instead have voted to protect pedophiles." I mean, he is just going with a targeted message. Really, I think, it is very important to create a permission structure to defy Trump. That is exactly what he's doing. Breaking the he is pinned sort of just breaking the spell by reminding them that like their 2028 will come, and then Trump will not be there to save you or destroy you.
Didn't he say like in 2030 he's going to be gone or something like that? Which
Something
I
like
thought
yeah.
was basically kind of the announcement this guy's a lame duck and he's not going to be around. Well, actually, this is the key thing that I'm going to watch with both Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene, because of course the great fear has been the reason why everybody bows the knee is because the assumption has been that if you defy Donald Trump, he will destroy you. You will have no career. You will become Charlie Sykes and Matt Lewis, right? But if in fact they survive and they're standing there and they're giving the fire back and they win, that changes the narrative, because a lot of Trump's power is the perception of his power. And I think he
And
understands,
he has
which is
tried to
why
be
he's lashing out at them so strongly. He
yeah.
has to.
And he's taken a lot of people down, but he tried to beat Massey before and he couldn't. He tried to beat Brian Kemp in
Yeah.
Georgia, and he couldn't. So, like it's not a foregone conclusion that he can do this. And I think his ability to impose discipline is weakening every day.
Well, and also the fact that he's fumbling on affordability, which is should be a layup for him. But I mean, it has become almost a Keystone Cop thing, where he sends out his economic guys. We're lowering the price of coffee. Well, how are you doing that? Well, we are eliminating the tariffs on coffee. Well, wait. So you are now admitting that it is the tariffs on the coffee that are paid for by American consumers that are making coffee so expensive. You're admitting that right now, and so yeah, that's not going well. Um, so as I said, I think, and I think that it's always hard to pick out which things really kind of move things, but there are pollsters out there who make a credible case that when he started tearing down the east wing of the White House
Hmm.
and he started building the big ballroom and everything, right around the time the government was shut down, they were cutting off food benefits. Somehow that cut through to people, and they
Yeah.
kind of realized, maybe you're not our guy. Maybe you're not sitting around thinking, how
Yeah.
are you going to improve my life? Maybe
It is
you're
interesting
not
to
my
me.
choice.
It is interesting to me that, inciting a riot of people to storm the Capitol is not a deal breaker, but building this gaudy monstrosity of a ballroom, which granted did require tearing down the East Wing,
Yeah.
um, that somehow now you've gone too far. Hey, look, I'll take what I can get. I'm fine if that's what it is.
Right.
If
No,
it's
I,
about if it's construction or architecture that concerns people, instead of ice raids or whatever, look, I'll take it if that's what it is. But it's weird. It seems weird to me.
it is. And I'm thinking this, trying to think through what it was about that. Um, I do think is the fact that Donald Trump and his that inner circle just no longer is paying attention to the optics. How does this look? Now let's go back to a different era. I mean, people like, and I want to make this, nonpartisan. Ronald Reagan was always very, very concerned about the optics. Bill Clinton was always
Yeah.
very concerned about the optics. Sometimes well, George Bush was concerned by the optics and got it terribly wrong. I mean, the whole, mission accomplished. Really, really, really bad optics. Um, I actually interviewed on my podcast today Matt Bennett from Third Way, which is kind of a center left Democratic group, and he admits that he was one of the very young age when he was 23 who staged the picture of Michael Dukakis in the tank
Uh,
when they talk about bad optics. There are just these moments where the optics define the moment. And if you want to
well,
go
and there
back to
used to
Michael
be,
Dukakis, yeah,
and part of the thing with Trump is, it used to be he would say like the Mexicans they're not sending their best, and someone would come in and be like, Mr. President, Mr. Candidate, you can't say that. You can't have a Gatsby theme party the day that we cut SNAP benefits.
right,
You
yeah,
can't do that. And those people, um, at a certain point, instead of being perceived as smart uh, public relations professionals like the Mike Devers of the world and James Bakers of the world, they became perceived as weak and effete, and good optics became conflated with like DEI and political correctness kind of thing. And so Trump has managed to survive and thrive while kind of flouting that sort of advice. So now I think like there's nobody to come in and say you'd be perceived as weak. It would actually hurt
yeah.
your standing
Well,
in the
on
White House
immigration.
to come in. Yeah.
Right. I mean, no, look, like immigration's his signature issue, right? I mean, I think that there's, tremendous support for securing the border, deporting illegal immigrants who commit crimes, all of that. This is a wind at your back issue from his point of view. And he's blowing it because of these images, these viral videos that Greg Bovino's going out there in his sort of stormtrooper outfit, shaking people down, breaking people's windows and everything. And yet, you're right. If somebody walked in and said, "Mr. President, you know what? No, we're on the right side of the immigration issue." I'm just describing what would happen in the Trump White House. But these videos are telling us, these optics are telling us, look what's happening with the Hispanic vote. Um, that person would be, oh, well, you're weak, right? What would Stephen Miller say about that person? What would Christy Nome say to that person? What would Tom Homan say after he got done, stuffing his bribe bag under his chair? By the way, whatever happened to that story? Are
Well,
you old enough? You're old enough
it
to
turns out
remember, right?
Tom Homan is a voice of reason in the administration now. So, take the money and run, buddy.
I just remember when that used to be like a big thing, and there used to be, if you were caught taking a bribe. So I don't know. There's going to be the big vote today. The Epstein story is not going away. We have had another prominent individual whose career has been destroyed by it. Larry Summers, the former president of Harvard, a very, very well-known economist, turns out not been accused of any sexual misconduct, but he was very chatty with Jeffrey Epstein, and that's enough basically to destroy his public career. And again, it's like, all right, when is the accountability going to come for the really powerful rich men in our society, including the president of the United States?
But Charlie, what's interesting is despite all the salacious stuff we've talked about already, what really has tongues wagging amongst the chattering classes, the one where they don't bite their tongues, um, is a different story. Have you been following the Ryan Liza Olivia Nuzzi controversy?
Well,
Let me say, I know and like both of them, but wow, what a story! And Ryan has put out a. I think he has a new. Do you know the name of that outlet, Charlie? Do you remember?
yeah,
The Telos.
tell us news, which is frankly must read. Okay, so just a little bit of background on all of this. You know, they used to be the couple. They're very very talented people. I mean, I was a big fan of her writing. She was on my
Yeah,
podcast.
almost
Um,
Didion-esque, I dare say.
right, and very very young. Anyway, you know the massive scandal she had in some sort of affair, digital affair. We have no idea at this point. With RFK Jr. and you know, this was while she was engaged to Ryan Lizza, who was at Politico, formerly of New Yorker. It was a very 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 messy breakup. She loses her job. He leaves Politico. Now she's on the West Coast working for Vanity Fair, and she's coming out with I'm going to say a tell-all book, but it's a book of her version of what happened. And now Ryan Lizza has taken to Substack to tell his version, like how I found out. What would you?
Hmm.
We shouldn't have any spoiler alerts here, though, should
No,
we?
but it involves two famous. It starts with one famous man
Oh, yeah.
and
Okay, don't give it away.
ends with
Yeah,
another. So read to the end. That's the thing. You've got to
right.
read the to the very end.
You have to
And then
read to the very end. Yeah.
so again, I like them both, but if this were like a small brewing story, I wouldn't have even brought it up. But seriously, like if you're out there watching and you have not been following this story, this is what everyone's actually talking about. Certainly in DC, I would say, and it makes $50,000 in a you know bag. What was the type of food? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was
Whatever.
yeah, just simply broad. Well, I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that it involves somebody like, you know, RFK Jr. and the whole weirdness of I know how he went from admitting brain worms and dumping a dead baby bear in Central Park to being a
Among Us.
presidential candidate and then now being the Secretary of Health and Human Services. I mean, part of that is like, what are we missing in this story? This is one of those, okay, you're not the crazy one if you're looking at this and going, I don't know that I would get involved with that guy at this
Yeah.
particular moment if
Well,
I was a
there's
top-notch
also,
political reporter.
I mean, without taking a sexy, exciting story and making it boring, there is like, the sort of the Kate Marr character. I think their name is Kate Marr, the character in what was the Kevin Spacey political TV show on
Oh,
Netflix.
yeah,
There's an
House of
angle,
Cards.
House of
Wow.
Cards, which I think Marin Cogan wrote a piece called House of Cads, which was quite good a few years ago for Politico. But there is a sense of like, if you want to be into journalistic ethics, some people would be saying like, this makes female journalists look like, are they constantly getting involved with sources, and is that unethical?
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and was that, but or is it the case maybe that like, hey, you meet people at work and there's a there's a spark. What are you going to do? I mean, like, I work in my house. I don't interact with anybody, so I don't know. I remember Charlie, when I used to work at the Daily Beast, I would have to every year take about 2 or 3 hours to go through this very extensive, watch these videos about sexual harassment in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I would have to watch a video and then answer multiple questions about it. And I'm like, I diligently did that for years. And I'm like, I work at my house. The only person here is my wife. The only person I interact with is I email a straight, like middle-aged white guy once a week. Like that's my entire interaction with the
Yeah, that's
company.
pretty much,
But
well, you know,
but I always
I
passed the
think
test.
dogs.
Never
Yeah.
harassed.
Well, let's just shift back to the outrage of the day then, since we've actually now revealed what everybody in DC is talking about. By the way, I'm coming to DC this week. I'm going to be going to an event, and I will test your. Although it's a funeral, so I'm not sure they're going to be talking about all of this. You know, we shouldn't pass over the fact that that MBS is visiting the White House and is going to be given a royal, treatment. This is the guy, the bone saw murderer who,
Hmm.
killed an American columnist who's been an international pariah. And once again, Donald Trump shows who are the people that he's most excited about, rolling out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin while he's engaging in war crimes, rolling out the red carpet and gold gaudy, whorehouse, Oval Office, you know, uh, decorations for MBS, the Saudi crown prince, and it is once again the incredible amorality of all of this, and for some reason in my mind, I'm also connecting this to the fact that on a daily basis, this country is committing war crimes. And I don't say that lightly. With the Donald Trump, blowing up these boats, I think he's getting a real rush out of the extrajudicial murders of these people in these boats, even though there's an incredible international chorus of voices, including many of our allies, who are saying, you just can't kill people on the high seas because you want a video. You know, I mean, if I actually thought that we were talking about terrorists who are headed towards San Diego with RPGs, okay, take them out. No one is making that allegation. We know almost nothing about the people that are being killed in the name of the United States of America because Donald Trump has for years had a real itch to do this sort of thing. And then the history of Donald Trump's history of praising war crimes, advocating war crimes, uh, pardoning war criminals is pretty long. And we're just seeing this play out. And it just feels as if there's never going to be any accountability.
Yeah, and this is one of those interesting, not to, I will go full circle. Um, I think this turns off some of the MAGA coalition, right? I think this is this is Trump doing probably what Marco Rubio wants him to do as it pertains to Venezuela. Like this is really maybe about Cuba and about toppling that regime. Um, and it's not something that like the Tucker Carlsons of the world want, right? They really don't want America to be involved in, going abroad looking for monsters to destroy. Um, I think Trump I mean, he doesn't actually have the ability to sort of coherently do this, but I think, you can make a case that Trump cares about our sort of areas of influence, spheres of influence, and that
Right.
this is like a Monroe Doctrine, Western Hemisphere type of thing. But that's kind of a stretch. I mean, that's not. I don't remember the isolationists really, saying like, feel free to invade other, as long as it's not over there. So I think this is like, is this Marco Rubio basically? He played the long game, and maybe he came out on top.
We don't know. Look, I mean, the government of Venezuela is one of the more deplorable governments. If this were, results in regime change, that would not be a terrible thing. On the other hand, and General Mark Hertling had a great piece the other day where he pointed out, Venezuela is not a small country. It is not a weak country. This is not like going into Grenada. This has a massive land mass. It has a huge population. This is not the kind of war you want to get into. We're also, alienating other South American countries as well. So, does Donald Trump have a is he playing the long game? Did Donald Trump ever play the long game? I don't know. I don't know that he plays the long game. My real fear is that the short game is going to be to use war with Venezuela as to wag the dog. By the way, this is not an original thought. It seems like if you're looking for the biggest and the best distraction about some story you don't want people talking about, that would be it. But that's going to cost American lives and treasure. And if you run on America first, it's complicated. And again, you notice that he continually talks about other wars. I mean, what was the thing about Nigeria? Going in there with guns blazing. Why are you talking about using troops in Mexico at this
Mhm.
particular point? I mean, what could possibly go wrong
Well,
doing that sort
yeah,
of
he doesn't consider the sort of second or third order effects. I mean, for one thing, sometimes things that start off seeming very simple become a quagmire. Other times there are unintended consequences. You could spark terror. You kill some, extrajudicial killings of someone, and their son comes back and launches a terrorist attack because
Right.
of what the sort of what you've done to them, the unfairness of it all. I mean, this is serious stuff, and that's why like Congress should actually be declaring war if we're actually going to engage in war. And at the very least, I mean, there should be you don't enter into this without really doing some thinking and having an end game in mind. And it doesn't really seem like Trump has done that. I don't feel like we've had a national conversation about this policy. It's sort of like how one day I woke up and there were a whole bunch of these like e-bikes all over Washington, D.C. I'm like, I
Right.
don't remember being asked about this, like so where does this go? Maybe something good comes out of it, or maybe something horrible comes out of it. But either way, I don't think this was, really litigated in the public.
No,
I don't think the election didn't really talk about this as far as
not
I'm
at all.
aware.
Well, and then also, you see, I was on a show and they played a soundbite of Donald Trump talking about the blowing up of the boats. And, why are you blowing up boats from Venezuela? And usually he'll talk about drugs. Now he's talking about immigration, how this country was flooded with all these Venezuelans and everything. It's like, really, if you're going to take the country to war, could you like settle on a reason, something?
Okay, Charlie. Before we get out of here, who is Bubba? There's a Bubba mentioned in an email from Jeffrey Epstein to his brother. And some people say that Bubba is Bill Clinton. The brother now says it's not Bill Clinton, but you're aware of this
Yes, we're all
story,
aware of
right?
Bubba. Yes.
I
I'm not
So
going to get out over my skis on this one. I don't know.
I don't know who Bubba is. So the implication is that Bubba is Bill Clinton and that Trump performed a certain act, a Monica on Bubba. Um,
Yeah.
Probably not true, but I think it's probably a good sign that this was spreading on the internet because, like, don't you? There's a theory out there that like all the cranks used to be on the left, and now the cranks
Yeah.
are all on the right. But you have to have some cranks. You got to have some cranks on your side, and I think some of the cranks are coming back now. They're turning against Trump. And even if it's a crazy conspiracy theory that's not true, you kind of need them if you're going to stop Trump, don't you?
No, no, I don't want to go there. I mean, I
I think
just,
we do.
here's the thing is there are so many reasons to oppose Donald Trump and to stop Donald Trump that the bubble blowjobs should not really be in the top five. I mean, it's just
No, I
let's
think
let
it's
the
up seven.
facts catch
It's
up
six,
to us,
seven,
shall we?
6, 7.
Huh?
It's
Yeah.
not top five, but I think this is where you're a better person. You're a good person, Charlie Sykes. I think I we need them. We need some crazy people. Not too crazy, but
Oh, see, here's
weirdos.
here's here's part of the problem. See, this was one of the great mistakes that I think that the right made a few years ago. I mean, I was around at that point when most conservatives were normal, but the decision was kind of made. We need the crazies because they're on our team, and what could possibly go wrong? And so we tolerated the crazies. We opened the door to the crazies. Like let the
Yeah.
crazies loose and do stuff on Obama, etc. And then suddenly you find out that wow, there's a lot of those crazies, and they're lighting
Yeah.
fires all over the place. We can't put them out. It's sort of like hey, let's raise a really cute baby alligator in our bathtub, and it's really, really cute. And then one day you realize, hey, it's getting bigger and bigger, Matt. It's going to climb out there. Oh, but he's so cute. And then before you know it, the alligator it climbed out, going down the street, eating people, and it's turned around and it's looking at you, and you're thinking, shit, I never thought the alligator was going to eat me.
Y- That's a great. I like that. It's persuasive. I think my concern is I would like a world where we drum those people out of polite conversation and out of politics. But I feel like that there's an asymmetry, and if the one side has all of them, that it's like
Yeah.
unilateral disarmament. right? And so, like, let's take someone like who's this? Is his name Tim Dillon? Is that the guy who's the podcaster that wears sunglasses all the time? I'm
Yeah,
probably getting the guy's name
yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
He's turned
Sure.
against Trump, right?
Yeah,
I
that's
think that's
okay.
good. I think we
Hmm.
need, when I say we, I'm not on the left, but
Right.
I'm a never Trumper for those who care about this. Those distinctions even matter? I don't know.
You've already made it clear that you're willing to ally with Joseph Stalin. So I think we've established the baseline here.
Well, you got me on that one, Charlie. Um, all right, man. Well, we can go on, but hey, the great thing is Wi-Fi held up, so that's
It
good. I'm
did.
excited.
I see some complaints that my audio wasn't that great, and just if you didn't tune in right at the beginning, we did warn you. We did warn people that we are in. This is podcasting in the middle of the apocalypse. There is this vast Cloudflare, right? The thing that's going on. And so who knows? But the good news is before you and I started, my lights were coming and going on and off, and there were all sorts of things. And every time it came back on, all of the printers and the electronics had to turn themselves on again. This could have been so if you have complaints about the the technical performance here, share them with Matt. Um, but it could have been way worse. Let's just put it that way.
Indeed. We got lucky. It worked out. Another great conversation, Charlie. Loved it, man.
It is.
I'm glad
Well,
we're doing these
I'll tell
on
you about
Tuesdays.
yeah, I'll tell you about my visit to Washington D.C. when we talk next time. Be interesting.
Indeed. You do that, and I will tell you the story about my run in with the Saudis in Washington, D.C. a few years ago as well. To be continued.
To
Charlie
be
Sykes.
continued. All right, thank you.
Thanks, man. Always a
Bye
pleasure.
bye.
Yeah.